Now in this tutorial we're going to be looking at angles on a straight line. Now angles on a straight line, before we go any further, you have to realize add up to 180 degrees. Okay? And that is the fundamental piece of knowledge that you need to have in order to solve these kinds of problems. Now let's take a look at how we can solve these kinds of problems. So here's an angle right here. Now as you can see right here we have our straight line right across there, and we have an angle off the straight line right here. So we've got two angles that have been created off the straight line. There's one here and there's one here. Okay, we'll call this one Y and we'll call this one X. And what we want to know, for example, is what is the value of one of these angles? Because together X and Y have to equal 180 degrees. So let's get rid of this label and let's actually give it a value. The value of this angle, let's just say it is 40 degrees. So how can we then find out what X is worth? So we have here X, we don't know what X is, but we do know what Y is because we've substituted that out for 40 degrees, and that is supposed to equal 180, right? So X plus 40 is supposed to equal 180. That's what that means. Now, how do we solve from here? We look at both sides. We need to end up with X equaling a number. So essentially, we have to get rid of plus 40. So how do we get rid of plus 40? The opposite of adding 40 is to subtract 40. And we've got to do that to both sides to keep the equation balanced. So positive 40 minus 40, we end up with 0. And the only thing that's left on the left-hand side is X. And on this side, 180 minus 40 is 140. And so the final answer is X equals 140 degrees. Finished. Now there's also one final note I'd like to share with you. In this case, in this example, what we have here, 40 degrees and angle X, which turned out to be 140 degrees, those are supplementary angles because they add up to 180. And with supplementary angles, you are only allowed to be considering two angles, and they have to equal 180 degrees. So because we only have two angles here, these angles on a straight line are also supplementary angles. But we can have more than just two angles on a straight line. So let's take a look at this example, where we have two angles already there, but let's add another one in for good luck. Let's consider what we do have. We've got an angle here, and here, and here. So that's three different angles. And because they all share, or they're all part of this straight line angle, we know that if there was angle A, B, C, I know that angle A plus angle B plus angle C has to equal 180 degrees. So, if I were to substitute letters for numbers, we could end up with a scenario like this, where I have, let's say, in this one, we've got 95 degrees. On this one here, we got, let's say, 50 degrees. Okay. What is angle A? So again, all I really need to do is do this. So write this out. Then I substitute in the values. It's going to equal 180 because we're on a straight line. I can simplify this, so I can do this bit right here. So it'll be A, angle A plus 145 equals 180. So now all I need to do is get rid of or cancel out adding 145 because that's the smallest number out of 145 and 180. So let's get rid of this. That will leave angle A all by itself, which is what we want. So I do the inverse or the opposite. I minus 145, and I must do it to both sides to keep the whole equation balanced. So if I have positive 145, then I minus 145, well that's 0. So I'm left with A. So A is left. And on this side, I have 180 minus 145, and that is 35. And so I now know that angle A is worth 35 degrees. And just one further note, these three angles are not supplementary angles. And the reason they're not supplementary angles is because there are three angles. For supplementary angles, you are only allowed to be considering two angles. Two angles need to equal 180 degrees. In this case, it's not two, it's 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's pretty much all there is to it.